Right, so this is going to be my video about a potential Avengers Doomsday plot leak that was posted on Reddit recently. So this basically opens up um, with the disclaimer that this comes from whoever's Spanish source, so it's translated from Spanish. So they might not have translated everything correctly, but it basically says their source worked as a runner on set, and they shared um, their information about uh, roughly 6 hours of raw footage that had been shot at that time, but it had not been all put together into the actual movie yet. So the first part is there's a major emphasis on Steve and Captain America stuff. He is no longer Cap. Um, yeah, there's another part to that. I'll cover that. So it says the film opens with the Marvel Studios logo glitching between red and green, underscored by the song Steve and Peggy dance to. The camera drifts ominously towards their house before cutting to Endgame's time heist sequence. Cap makes the jump, and we get a CGI montage with credits showing Cap returning the Infinity Stones, saving Peggy's timeline for last. As soon as he lands there, we see him triggering slow, branching timelines. The title card Avengers Doomsday appears. Um, so yeah, as far as the Steve stuff, and him not being Cap, that makes sense. We obviously have Sam as Captain America right now, and um, so it might be confusing to some, the normies that watch the movies that there's two Captain Americas. Then again, we are in the multiverse um era, so shouldn't be too shocking, but there has been talk, I believe there was even talk back during Avengers Infinity War that Steve was going to be going by the Nomad persona from the comics. So him not being Cap, and then that lines up with the teaser we got of it saying Steve Rogers would return. They didn't say Captain America. Um but then yeah, this whole montage of Steve returning the Infinity Stones and everything, that actually lines up with um, something that was confirmed a while ago that the Russo brothers were actually going to stay at Marvel Studios past Avengers Endgame, and they were working on a story for another movie um, that would have been a Steve and Peggy movie, and it would have involved following Steve returning the Infinity Stones and stuff that would happen with that. Um, I don't think there were that many details revealed about it. Um, but yeah, it seems like now that they're officially back, they're kind of just taking that idea and putting it in the beginning of Avengers Doomsday, and that's how they're tying it to Avengers Endgame, which is why they're re-releasing that in theaters. Um, Although it does this, according to this, if this is true, this is saying it's only going to be a CGI montage. So yeah, it seems like they're including it, but it might be just skipped over in a way if they're not taking their time to show all of it. It's kind of interesting that it's this is claiming it's all CGI. They're not really doing it live action. Um, but and then this is also kind of going into like the Steve and Peggy timeline. There was a lot of debate about um if when Steve went back to live with Peggy, if that was an alternate timeline or if he was somehow in a like a time loop situation where he was in the main timeline, but as long as he didn't um do anything that would disrupt the normal flow of time, he could live in the main timeline, and then you know, that could mean there are two Steve Rogers at that time if it's the 40s or 50s when he's living with Peggy. So there'd be the Steve that's frozen in the ice. Then there's the modern day Steve that's secretly living with Peggy. Um, that's almost kind of what they're they ended up doing with Deadpool and Wolverine, you know, having two Wolverines, and then you technically have an X-23 before the main X-23 would be born. Um, yeah, and then there was that whole thing after Avengers Endgame, people were asking, um, you know, the directors and the writers what the deal with the timeline was, and the Russo brothers said it was their intention that they were he created a branch timeline when he was living with her because that changed history. However, the writers did interviews where they said it was actually their intention that Steve and Peggy were living together in the main timeline, and their intention was that would tie back to um, stuff they wrote because they are the same writers that worked on Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Um, tie in with Peggy and uh, her kids that she, according to that movie, had with somebody else. But according to the writers, it was supposed to be some sort of sneaky reference, um, setting up this whole time travel thing and them actually being Steve's kids, but Steve wouldn't know that at that time. But yeah, this seems like it is 100% an alternate timeline, and it kind of gets into that later. Um, then I don't. This is just I know a little thing, but it's interesting that it says the title card appears like at the beginning of the movie. Um, from what I remember, most of the Marvel movies nowadays they usually don't put the title cards at the beginning, so that's a little odd, but I don't know. Again, it's minor and really doesn't matter if it's at the beginning or end, but I just know think they moved away from that a while ago. Um, the story then continues directly from the Fantastic Four post-credit scene. Sue discovers a hooded figure near Franklin. She shields him and blasts the intruder across the room. Um, it is revealed to be Doom as she goes to strike again. Doom stops her and shows that he means no harm. Um, yeah, there's another part of this that I'll talk about that. Doom, yeah. So he explains to her the situation that is happening and that he comes from an alternate version of Earth 616 called Earth 616B. This is our main timeline, basically, but a branch of it. A branch created by none other than Steve when he changed a piece of history in the timeline he's staying in. Steve saves Bucky in this timeline, creating a branch timeline at that point and fundamentally altering Tony Stark's life. He didn't know where they took him, but he knew where he'd end up being at some point. So, I guess the first part, yeah, that was always the weird thing for me with Doctor Doom is when First Steps came out, I pretty much thought the whole Latverian seat that you see in the Future Foundation was obviously a reference to Doctor Doom, but I figured that would mean the main Doctor Doom we're following is from Earth 828, but according to this, he's coming from 616B. Um, so yeah, that's what I have a hard time understanding is like why they would tease 828 Doom if we're then not gonna get him. So basically, the one in the post-credit scene is not meant to be the one that um should have been at the Future Foundation or should have had an ambassador or whatever. Um, but then that's kind of what makes me question the whole Sue attacking him thing because obviously Sue runs the Future Foundation, so she would likely know who Doctor Doom is, or at least the 828 version. So would she attack a Doctor Doom on sight like that? Although I guess the counter argument would be that Doctor Doom, well, whatever universe he's from, apparently broke into their house and he's like right next to their kid. So guess she could be defensive. Um, and then I don't, and this explanation is kind of weird to me too. Like, why would Sue really care about like 616B and stuff like that? I mean, I know it's set up that Reed does know about the multiverse to some extent. Um, and the whole B classification or terminology. I don't know if that is from Marvel. I know like the Marvel database, which is the Marvel wiki, they use that for I know like the Spider-Verse movies because um Sony is using the direct um numbers that were already used by Marvel in the comics for their universes too. And so the Marvel wiki kind of puts the B's on there to distinguish that this is like almost a second iteration of a universe. I don't know how to explain it. Like, it's not the comic book one, but it's a second ultimate universe designation being used by someone else. Um, So yeah, I just don't know why Marvel themselves would um do that, but then again, they are calling the MCU 616 and we already have the comic book universe as 616. Um but then again, when we got that designation, Marvel didn't do anything with, you know, didn't call the MCU 616B when they could have. So it's kind of odd that they're now going to call a branch timeline off of that one B. I don't know. It's just odd to me. Um, let's see. And then that's the other part of this is the whole Steve saving Bucky. Um, I could kind of see that happening, but then the hard time I have is this claims that when he saves Bucky, he drastically alters Tony's life in that timeline. Um, I'm trying to think how that would work. Um, because obviously Tony was pretty old. I don't remember what age when his parents were killed by Bucky. Um, yeah, I don't really see how I guess his parents surviving would change him in any way. Um, yeah, it's just odd because then this leak does get into another part of changing Tony's history, but I guess not really this timeline's Tony. So it's kind of weird. Um, it just leaves off information about how exactly that works. And then, yeah, and then I really don't understand this last sentence. Again, this person claims this is true and this was translated from Spanish. He didn't know where they took him, but he knew where he'd end up being at some point. I guess I don't know who that's actually referring to. Um, unless that's referring to Steve finding Bucky, like at the car scene from like the tape in Captain America Civil War, like he knew where he was gonna attack Tony's parents, and that's when he stepped in, prevented their deaths, and grabbed Bucky. But again, I from reading the other parts of this, that this kind of plot doesn't really get expanded upon. But then again, this later does claim this is only the first 40 or 50 minutes, and then it does say it wasn't put together, so, maybe they didn't see the part where it explains this more. I don't know if this is true at all. All right. Tony grows up differently and is ultimately known as Victor. Yes, it is revealed that Tony Stark was always Victor Von Doom, but due to him getting adopted in the mainline MCU, his name is changed to Tony Stark. Though this does not change a lot because much of his life echoes Tony's, key events diverge. He experiences a Thanos snap similar to Endgame, survives it but is left severely disfigured and placed on life support. A suit is built to sustain him, Later on, we learn that uh, that a space-time tear destabilizes his world, killing his wife and child, who seem very, very familiar. Steve is the reason for all of this. The branch he creates crossed the threshold and interfered with other branches, causing a monopoly effect called the incursions, and slowly ending the universe. He birthed Doom because he played with time. Time happens to be something of importance in this film, by the way. All right, so yeah, see, this is where it's kind of confusing. Like, is this referring to the same Tony that Steve just stopped Bucky from? But it seems like this is saying his new, the one Steve and Peggy timeline crossed another universe, which changed everything. Um, but yeah, so this is claiming that the whole theory about Tony Stark actually being Victor Von Doom is true. So if you don't know that theory, basically people have said that the MCU Tony that was Iron Man in the MCU, Tony Stark is not his birth name, that he is actually Victor Von Doom. But something happened where Victor ended up getting adopted by the Starks and they renamed him Tony Stark. So basically, yeah, and I've seen people talk about this, and I know there's a lot of people that kind of hate that idea because they feel like it's changing so much about Tony, but then again, I've seen people argue that, it's kind of like you're just whatever your name is doesn't truly dictate your destiny. So even though Tony was in theory born a villain, um, he was able to become a hero. Um, yeah, I'm kind of on the fence with that kind of stuff personally. Um, uh, but yeah, so somehow, um, yeah, whatever Steve did apparently affects Victor's timeline, the main one. Um, and then it says like that Victor survives the snap in Endgame. It really doesn't say how he does. I would assume maybe magic or something. Um, but it's kind of interesting that if it was magic, like when Doctor Strange looked through time and everything, he might not have seen everything, but um, maybe he would have some knowledge of how to prevent Tony's death at the time in the MCU. Um, so that'll be interesting if this is true, like how they explain that. But yeah, we do know he's supposed to have a disfigured face, obviously. Um, then this whole thing about Doom's wife and child that die, and they seem very, very familiar. There's another part in this that I'll get to later that's kind of odd. Um, Obviously, just jump ahead a little bit. This is likely referring to in his universe that he was married to Sue Storm and Franklin was their child, and that was kind of why he was in the post-credit scene kneeling next to Franklin, is because to Victor that is his son. And that might be a reason why he's after the Fantastic Fours, because now he can have a his wife and child back. Um, but that's the yeah, I'll get to that later. Um, um, yeah, and then that was always the weird thing because there were a lot of rumors that Steve living with Peggy was the entire plot or the reason Doctor Doom was evil for Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars is all because Steve was just trying to have a family of his own. Um, which I hope it's a little more complicated than that because um obviously that was a thing with the story arcs in the Infinity Saga was like Tony started off as selfish and then Steve was selfless and then by Endgame, Tony makes the ultimate sacrifice so he's selfish now and then Steve decides to be selfish um and actually enjoy life and not be a hero anymore that he can be with the girl he's always wanted to be with and let everyone else take care of all the stuff. So that's the problem that I've noticed, I've thought of, and I've seen other people talk about is it kind of undoes Steve's story arc. Like he's, you know, not really happy and then loses the life he could have had with Peggy and then he loses faith in like the American government as he finds out Shield's doing shady stuff, and then they're actually infiltrated by Hydra, and then you have the Sokovia Accords, and he keeps getting disillusioned by the government that he originally wanted to help serve in the first movie. So then he goes and finally has happiness, and then now it seems like they're going to take that all away because him having happiness is almost the end of the multiverse. So it seems like a huge jump to me that it's one of those weird things that if they just say, well, it's destiny that Steve cannot be happy, yeah, it's just weird. And then yeah, the whole thing about time is important. Obviously, in all the teasers, we have a doomsday clock counting down, and I believe that was part of the 2015 Secret Wars comics too, or that was the Avengers and New Avengers. When the incursions were happening, they say like how much time until the next incursion or something like that. So yeah, that seems believable. Um, So then, four primary factions anchor the film: the Avengers, New Avengers, Fantastic Four, and Wakandans, Talokans. The Young Avengers are present but positioned more prominently for Secret Wars. Other heroes are elsewhere doing what they always do. So this kind of makes sense, but then again, they were making a big deal about the X-Men and their involvement with the story. So this is kind of odd why this leaves the X-Men out of it. Um Young Avengers, that kind of makes sense that they're present, but more for Secret Wars. Um Obviously it's going to be a packed movie as is, and we still probably don't even know the whole cast. But then we just did get the Thor teaser that has Love in it, and people are saying she's what could be part of the Young Avengers, almost as I think her name was Singularity, um, character from the comics. But yeah, so they're present, but being positioned more for Secret Wars, which that's what a lot of theories came out with for when the concept art was leaked, when they had like Wong and Star Lord, and then a bunch of the Young Avengers characters, is that um, the main heroes, the main Avengers, New Avengers, and all that, they would be the ones taking the lead in Doomsday, and then whatever happens during Doomsday happens. The Young Avengers kind of stay back, and they're not affected by it, and so they can come in during Secret Wars, and they can help, um, rescue the other cast of Doomsday after whatever happens. Then yeah, other heroes are elsewhere. That kind of gets covered later on here. The story picks up again sometime after the Thunderbolts post-credit scene where an incursion begins and the Fantastic Four, along with Doom, enter Earth 616. Initially, only their two Earths collide. The Fantastic Four, Wakanda, and Doom coordinate in efforts to stop the collision. Yes, their first stop is actually Wakanda. They all meet along some desert. The Fantastic Four introduce themselves and they waste no time. They start thinking and sharing ideas, a proposal is made for reusing the portal technology they had intended to deploy against Galactus, reasoning that no one is left to interfere this time. They build these timers to count down the incursion because Doom and the Fantastic Four already know how it goes. The incursions last a set amount of time before two Earths collide. They go back to their Earth, and we see that four massive structures, two on each perpendicular side of the Earth, are built uh, that will teleport the Earth. Um, so yeah, most of this is talking about how they're gonna use that bridge from Fantastic Four First Steps. Um, and then it mentions they can use it now because now they don't have to worry about Galactus or the Silver Surfer, you know, actively trying to destroy their stuff, um, like they did. Um, then yeah, it says they meet at some desert when they're going to Wakanda. We did get some set photos of, um, I forget where that was, but it was a desert. Um, And then I think around that time is when we got the like set photos of, or the photo of cast and crew at dinner, and that's where we saw the actors that played Atuma and Namora. Um, because they really haven't been shown in anything official yet, but they were there at that filming location. Um, so yeah, they'd obviously go to Wakanda for, you know, I don't know, vibranium or um Shuri's intelligence combined with Reed's and Doom's and all that to help build the portals or the bridge parts. Um, yeah, and I think that they get into that more on this next part. So they successfully delay the incursions with 616 twice. The second teleportation completely drains their Earth's energy reserves, which would take far too long to replenish naturally. Because the incursion is narrowly avoided twice, a third forcibly breaks through, destabilizing the central points of each universe, shortening the length of time they originally had when it was just two Earths on course. With time running out, a joint reconnaissance mission is assembled to investigate this third Earth. Um, yeah, so this is something, I don't know if they'll get into it in the movie. I saw people breaking down that uh, teleporting the Earth with the bridge technology would actually probably destroy Earth if we used actual real world science. Um, just because I forget what, if it was like moving it away from the moon and the moon controls the tides, so that would mess with the oceans. And I forget like distance from the sun or everything like that. Like it would actually destroy Earth, but who knows? Maybe they'll ignore that for the movie. Um, yeah, that'll be interesting to see like Earth going through an entire blackout. Um, Yeah, and then it says this third one, and this next part gets into the Earth that they're going to. This mixed team comprising Avengers, New Avengers, Wakandan, Talokan members, and the Fantastic Four arrives on a peaceful X-Men Earth. Global defense systems immediately detect an Omega-level threat entering the atmosphere. Sentinels are deployed, and it seems they're targeting Franklin. In several moments, Franklin appears instinctively aware of his powers. He effortlessly destroys some of the Sentinels, impressing Sue and the team and slowly drawing Doom's intense interest. Upon landing, the X-Men get their own warning that there may be enemies nearby. The scientific minds begin analyzing the world, while others explore and eventually reach the X Mansion. After brief tension, Monica Rambeau intervenes to de-escalate the situation. Doom vanishes, later discovered deep within the X Mansion's base, tampering with machinery alongside Franklin. The confrontation erupts. Doom escapes with Franklin aboard the Fantastic Four's ship. The heroes regroup, exchange information, and return to Earth 616 to devise a plan to locate Doom and rescue Franklin. Um, So yeah, this basically says they're going to the X-Men Earth that Monica was at the end of the Marvels. Um, and that's been something that's been, talked about a lot from fans is what Earth is this exactly that we're getting? Because we keep hearing that this is like an X-Men Utopia universe where the X-Men achieve Charles's dream and they're all together, but then um we get reports, and I think even this leak almost contradicts itself. Um, because something later on says that it's basically the main X-Men timeline from the movies that Deadpool and Wolverine saved in their movie. Which that's what makes sense to me is it would it would just make sense to pick this up like sometime after um the end of uh X-Men Days of Future Past. So it's not necessarily an X-Men Utopia universe, I don't think. Because later on it says like Deadpool, Wolverine, X-23, and all them, Dogpool, um, just go and help the X-Men, which I don't know, would you actually take the time to say that this is a different X-Men universe? And then now you have to explain that Deadpool and Wolverine from the main X-Men universe are coming over into this new X-Men universe and joining that team of X-Men. That just seems like a lot more work to do. Um, then it mentions that Doom um, becomes more interested in Franklin once he takes out some Sentinels. Um, yeah, I'm not really sure about that because obviously, um, we already know Doom is interested in Franklin from the first steps post credit scene, so I don't know, you know, if that makes complete sense. Because we already know he's interested in Franklin, and now he's even more interested. Um, Again, if he was the Earth 828 Doctor Doom, maybe he caught on to some information that Galactus was after their son for some reason, so he would already know that some giant cosmic entity is interested in their son in Franklin, so wouldn't he already be interested in Franklin from that? Though then again, you could argue this is maybe Doom's first time seeing his powers firsthand, so now he's even more impressed. I don't know. Then yeah, it mentions that Doom goes into the X Mansion, starts tampering with machinery alongside Franklin. Um, and then yeah, that's about it. It like doesn't go into any details about what exact machinery he's messing with and what that has to do with anything. So that I feel like is odd. Um, yeah. So yeah, and then now the rest is pretty much just bullet points. It says all of that is like the first 40 or 50 minutes of the film apparently. Some miscellaneous details. Multiple major character deaths occur, including Magneto and Professor X. Throughout the film, Doom never harms Sue for reasons that remain deliberate and unresolved. We will see this we will see his backstory. A Peggy Carter variant aligns herself with Doom. Several of Doom's masked followers are revealed to be known variants in disguise. A montage depicts countless universes colliding, including animated realities. Nearly every MCU character across film and television appears briefly, approximately 3 seconds each. So yeah, like I mentioned before, according to them, this is only part of the film, 40 to 50 minutes. Um, then it mentions like um, multiple major character deaths, including Magneto and Professor X. What's interesting about that is I don't know if that's meant to imply they're being killed at the mansion by the Sentinels, which we've seen in the X-Men teaser for Doomsday. The Sentinels attacking the mansion and then the set photos. But we know Magneto and Professor X are both there. But there were other rumors. Of course, you don't know if this is true or if the other rumors are true as of right now. Um, there are some people reporting that we're supposed to see Professor X fight the Sentry at some point. So I don't know if that's supposed to be part of that whole first part. And then there were rumors that we were supposed to see Magneto on Genosha with like his comic accurate family of Wanda, Pietro, and Polaris. Um, so that's something that's also missing from this description, if that's real or if this is real. Um, and that kind of seems like some big stuff to skip over, but then again, this was in parts apparently. Um, then yeah, kind of like I mentioned before, this says Doom never harms Sue for reasons that remain unresolved, and we'll see his backstory. Yeah, I feel like they already, if the whole first part is true, where his wife and child seem very, very familiar, I feel like that already answers a question of why Doom never harmed Sue. So it's kind of feels like this is supposed is saying like, oh, you'll recognize his family when they show them, but then you'll also not know why he's not harming the people that they just showed you. So it seems a little contradictory to me. Um, then yeah, Peggy Carter variant aligning with Doom. Not much there, but that'll be interesting. See if it's a Captain Carter variant or if it's just like the regular spy Agent Carter variant. Um, then it says Doom's mass followers are revealed to be known variants in disguise. Um, this one, um, we kind of already know. There's some supposed leaks of concept art of masked followers of Doom. Like there was rumors that Doom's gonna basically have like, I don't know, people referring to him as Doom's three wives, and they each have a different colored cloak. I forget what colors they said. I think one was red, one was green. I don't remember was it yellow or gold? I don't remember. Um, but people were theorizing like who they could be, and people were thinking, one could be Wanda, one could be Jean Grey, and then there were some people saying maybe Sylvie could be one of them. But I guess my question is, especially if this is true, and like if this was translated from Spanish, and if there are translation errors, like what exactly does this mean? Is it when it says known variants? Is this variants that we're familiar with, or is this like just variants of known characters? Like, for example, if it's known variants, um, just hypothetically, let's say, is it revealed that it's Party Thor from What If? Like, in that sense, it's a variant that we know, and now somehow off screen he's joined Doom's cause, or is this known variants as one of them is going to be a Thor that we've never seen that variant before, but we know Thor. So now this is like a variant of a character we're familiar with. Um, yeah, so it's kind of, to me it's a little unclear on what that could mean. Um, then yeah, countless universes colliding, including animated realities. Um, I assume when it talks about animated realities, what if universes are probably up there. It'd kind of be interesting to see if they include some of the other, past Marvel cartoon universes that were on and then ended, and they're just finally tying it into all this Secret Wars stuff. Be cool to see if there's any like new realities or if they'll go back to like Earth 838, which has been rumored, and show that one being destroyed or whatever. Um, And then at the end here it says every MCU character across film and television appears briefly, approximately 3 seconds each. This one, I really hope is true because I've kind of been waiting for this kind of scene. Um, because I remember back during Infinity War, there were people, that wanted like the Defenders to show up in Infinity War and help fight Thanos and his forces. But there were like fans that were saying, well, no, they shouldn't because they can't do anything. So my argument is one, if they're, superheroes, most of the time when I think of superheroes, they try to stop the bad guys even if they're outmatched. Like they're gonna do whatever they can. They might not make it through it, but they're gonna at least try. So it makes no sense that Daredevil's like, oh, alien invasion. Well, I'm out because I don't do aliens. I just do like ninjas or mobsters. Um, but yeah, and that's something I've seen in, the comic books where they have some giant um event happening and they do show like, okay, this is supposed to be a huge, planetary, universal, multiversal event going on, and we need to show that it impacts, you know, everyone. So what do? You give some of the smaller characters that might not be part of the main cast of the story, you give them like a slight cameo to be like, oh, well, they're impacted by this just as much as the main cast is. So, like this instance, it's an incursion. We kind of saw one in No Way Home where all those Spider Man characters were coming through a rift in the sky. So if it's across the sky and stuff, obviously it'd be visible for, however big the rift is, probably across the planet. So I could see something going on where they cut to cameos of everyone looking up in the sky to see this other Earth coming towards their Earth. And for me, I'm a fan of like the original Marvel television characters. So I feel like this could be a quick and dirty way to bring some of the other Marvel television shows that currently aren't considered canon into the MCU, and it's just done in such a quick way that it almost doesn't matter that they show them or not because you don't need to go into everyone's backstory. It's just a quick cameo and that's it. So like how I would do it is like you would show the incursion happening and then you go to the people that aren't the main cast. So you show like Moon Knight and he sees the rift happening, and then you cut to She-Hulk and she sees it happening. Then you cut to like Cloak and Dagger, they see it happening. Then you cut to Luke Cage, he sees it happening. You cut to the Runaways, they see it happening. And the Agents of Shield or to Echo and all that. And that's just how you do those quick cameos. Um, and yeah, because I liken it to Avengers Endgame when they kind of did that with Edwin Jarvis, because in Endgame you have that Edwin Jarvis showing up, played by the Marvel television actor from the Agent Carter series. Um, so like for most of the audience that never watched the Marvel television series, you probably just don't think of any major backstory to that character yet. Me personally, I've seen the show, so I kind of know his backstory, even though technically when that happened, the TV show isn't considered canon to him. But I have more of a connection to that cameo than most people that just watch the movies at that point. So that's something cool because I know, yeah, going back to like the Infinity War and the comics, during the Infinity Gauntlet comic book, they would have like the Avengers looking at a screen, like trying to contact other heroes, and they just have a huge display of pictures of heroes, and it just say like missing, 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 and that would help. You know, it's kind of quick cameos, and it helps build the impact of what's actually going on. So this scene really makes sense to me, and I really hope it's happening because I think it'd be really cool and helps show more of the impact. Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man appears early. His Earth collides with another, and he is said to be fighting mutants. One or two new Avengers are critically injured or killed. Reed Richards reaches a breaking point, losing faith in stopping the incursions. Loki has a minor role. Thor and Sylvie are seen protecting him. An army of TVA agents are assembled to stop Doom, even. Deadpool, Wolverine, Dogpool, and X-23 appear. Wolverine sides with the X-Men, prompting Deadpool and the others to join them. Um, the Void is one of the many escape points after all of existence ends. The Quantum Realm is an escape point too. Tom Holland's Spider Man has a very small, possibly CGI only appearance, with the larger role reserved for Secret Wars. Vision and the Guardians return in Secret Wars. Um, so yeah, that's been a rumor for a while now that basically Tom Holland's barely in Doomsday, if at all, and the main Spider-Man of that movie will be Tobey Maguire. So um, yeah, and then it mentions his Earth is colliding with another, and he's fighting mutants. Um, yeah, so I don't know if that's just supposed to mean his Earth is colliding with another X-Men related universe. Um, yeah, I don't know. It doesn't really give that much information, and like, does he end up dying? It doesn't go into that. If his Earth actually collides with the other one, like, because if he's like the only superhero on his Earth, what is he supposed to do on his own? Yeah. Um, New Avengers are critically injured and killed. I could actually see this happening because, it was like what they addressed in Thunderbolts is that most of them are just super soldiers, so um, they can't really do much when you're going up against, Sentinels and X-Men and whatever else, Doom and whoever's on his team. Um, yeah, I can see that happening. Um, then the other interesting that's almost a red flag is Loki has a minor role. Um, that was basically the theory of the whole chair reveal was that was like the main cast, and then they would introduce other people later on. So, I guess I don't know how true that is with now they're confirming Steve, and we're also supposed to have Doctor Strange in this, and I feel like they would have pretty prominent roles, but they weren't included in the shares. Um, but this is dealing with the collapse of the multiverse, and it seems odd that Loki, who's sitting at the middle of the multiverse, would have a minor role. Um, and then yeah, I saw it on the comments of this Reddit post, complaining about how little Thor's included in this supposed leak. Um, because obviously he was in the chairs and now he got his own teaser. Um, and that's the whole theory behind like Love being in the movie too, is she's basically born of eternity, who is the living embodiment of the universe, and obviously the universe is coming to an end. And so the teaser kind of establishes that um, she's almost sick and dying, which would make sense if she's part of the universe and the universe is ending. Um, and especially, putting together the whole Steve being a father and Thor being a father and, the whole possible, well, at least the Fantastic Four, Sue being a mother, Reed being a father, um, and the whole parenthood theme. I would think Thor would have a bigger role. Sylvie, yeah, I'm not really sure how big a role she'd have. Probably minor. Um, but yeah. And then, like I said before, Deadpool and all them joining the X-Men. This kind of seems like they just go over to the X Mansion and help, which again would imply that the X-Men that Monica's with from the Marvels post-credit scene, they are the same ones in the main timeline. So there is no two universes of X-Men. There's just the main one. Um, I just really feel like that's the easiest way to go. I mean, they could do multiple universes. I just don't know why they'd add that extra step. Um, But that is the weird thing, I guess, is how that impacts the Logan movie, because that was a big thing of Deadpool and Wolverine, was that they didn't want to undo the events of that, but I feel like this whole Secret Wars reboot is gonna have to undo the events of Logan, um, because like even Feige said, once the reboot happens, or reset as he likes to call it, um, he's thinking one timeline, so that I feel like that means they're gonna permanently end the Fox X-Men universe, so that, you know, that's one of those things where they can finally get rid of these other cinematic universes, like doing crossovers with, like Tobey Maguire's and Andrews, so that moving forward, they really don't have to address doing any more crossovers and coordinating any of those, because they can say, well, their universe is ended, and now it's just this. So we already got our crossover, and that's about it. Um, but yeah, it feels like then the events of Logan will be rewritten because of the reboot. Um, yeah, so not sure how to feel about that, because obviously, I mean, I guess because of Deadpool, well, I guess Deadpool 2 and Deadpool and Wolverine always say Logan definitely happened before Secret Wars, so the movie's still important. It's just gonna be important pre Secret Wars, so yeah. Um then yeah, it's kind of interesting. This talks about different escape points. One being the void, one being the quantum realm. Obviously, there have been a lot of theories that the void is just gonna end up being Battle World, because all the remnants of the universes going on, just combining on the void itself. Um, but yeah, this is the first time I've heard anything about really the quantum realm being involved. Um, but yeah, and then this doesn't really go into detail of this mentions the void later on, but it doesn't mention the quantum realm later on. So yeah, it's kind of odd. Um, then like I said, it's pretty much been talked about for a while that Tom Holland's barely in this movie. Um, CGI only. Yeah, maybe he only shows up in his suit at some point, or maybe he's one of the cameos when it's showing different parts of the world. Because by most accounts, Brand New Day is almost like taking place um concurrent with Doomsday, kind of like how Ant-Man and the Wasp was handled with Infinity War. Um, yeah. Vision and the Guardians coming back in Secret Wars, that makes sense to me. Because obviously we got that chair reveal, and there wasn't a single member of the Guardians in that. And then obviously we have these teasers that still haven't gone into anything Guardians related. And then, like I said, we had that concept art of Wong with Star Lord and the Young Avengers at the bar. So that's kind of what my theory was with that um, artwork, is that it's Wong trying to assemble like the backup team after the main team of Doomsday failed. Now he's got to go grab what's left and work with them. Then there was also that concept art of Star Lord sitting on the couch with Vision. So that seems to possibly be either concept art for Secret Wars, or maybe it's like a surprise cameo scene meant for Vision Quest, because that's what I almost thought it was for, because Vision Quest is supposed to deal with White Vision trying to um reacclimate to life on Earth after losing his memories, and now he has them, but he doesn't. The plot is that he doesn't truly connect with his memories. Um, but like he's trying to fit in with Earth now and stuff, and then I figured that concept art was almost hinting at a joke, like he's trying to learn how life on Earth is, and so he ends up getting help from Peter, who is from Earth, but he hasn't been on Earth for years. So Peter really doesn't know anything about modern day Earth. So it'd be that funny, you know, choosing the almost wrong mentor sort of thing. Um, so yeah, but yeah, Vision and the Guardians and Secret Wars, that makes sense. Um, so recent Steve Rogers footage shown theatrically does not appear in the current cut as of now because Steve has a beard in the film when he steps out and everyone sees him for the first time. It was likely shot for marketing purposes or will be incorporated early on in the film at a later point. It is said that Steve has been through Secret Wars and there's two versions of how he ends up with the shield. The cliffhanger is not the incursion, it's someone's waking up in a pod or something in the void, apparently. Um, so yeah, this first part is basically saying the whole Steve Rogers teaser that was released isn't in the movie, or at least currently is not part of the movie. Um, yeah, so there have been some things in the past that Marvel and even Sony has shot that was basically solely for marketing purposes and not actually part of the movie. Um, we got that scene from Infinity War where Steve was leading a charge in Wakanda with all the heroes, and I think it included the Hulk. And that scene I think was never meant to be in the movie. Um, the one I know was never meant to be in the movie was Spider-Man: Homecoming. If you watch the original trailer, at the very end it shows Peter swinging and Tony flying right next to him, right at the end. Um, and the director was asked why that scene wasn't in the movie, and he basically said that scene was never in the movie. That's 100% CGI and was made for marketing to help get the point across that it's Spider-Man with, in the larger universe. Um, so yeah, that shot was never meant to be in the movie. So now they're saying this whole thing with the motorcycle and putting his suit away and holding the baby isn't part of the movie, um, or at least as of right now. Um, then it says he's been through Secret Wars, and there's two versions of how he ends up with the shield. So there's kind of two parts of that. That has been one of the unanswered questions of, um, Steve's shield was destroyed, so how did Old Man Steve at the end of Endgame have a shield to give to Sam? Um, it's like, well, when he was back with Peggy, did he, find himself frozen, grab the shield, and now he brought it there, but now that would mean that Steve doesn't have a shield. So, you know, it's kind of something we haven't really had explained to us. Um, but then it's saying Steve's been through Secret Wars already. Um, yeah, I'm not sure how they would handle that, but that kind of does get into the Old Man Steve too. Is like, well, did Old Man Steve already live through like the events of Doomsday and Secret Wars, and now that's at the end of Endgame he comes back to help set up Sam with the shield. I know there were theories of that with Tony in Endgame. Basically, in Endgame, Thanos makes the jump through time and destroys the Avengers base. People have noticed that like Steve was struggling to get out of the rubble, and Tony kind of comes up and helps him up, but it almost seems like Tony is like 100% fine, like he wasn't even in the building. But then he also tells Steve that when you mess with time, it tends to mess back. And so people were wondering, like, okay, that makes sense what he says, but it only makes sense to us because we, as the audience, know that Thanos made the jump through time and blew up the base. Like, how would Tony, who was just in the building, know that they were attacked by someone who time traveled? Because that seems to be what he's implying. So there's been a theory that during that explosion, Tony gets pulled out of the main timeline, and he's taken to the events of Secret Wars. He fights in Secret Wars. He then at some point learns that it was the 2014, I think, Thanos that attacked them. Then he's put back to where he was originally, and he goes help Steve out, and then that's how he makes the remark that he already knows it's a time traveler basically that attacked them, even though from what we know he shouldn't know who attacked him. It could have been anyone, but somehow he just knows it was Thanos from a different timeline. Um so yeah, I'm not really sure about all that. It'd be interesting to see how much they actually did set all this stuff up way back in 2019 that we're finally getting paid off now. Especially, when talking about the writers saying that Steve and Peggy's kids were meant to be his through time travel all the way back in Captain America Winter Soldier, and they were basically plotting out secret wars and time travel and all that. Is kind of crazy if that all is true. Um, then yeah, the cliffhanger is not the incursions. I kind of figured that. I feel like it really is going to line up similar to Infinity War and Endgame, where it's gonna end with the Avengers losing. Um, but instead of just having the Earth destroyed, they're gonna show Battleworld be formed, and I'm guessing you give a couple minutes to help establish the concept of Battleworld, either at the end or in the post-credit scenes, and then that way you can pick up directly on Battleworld in the Secret Wars. So yeah, and then it mentions someone waking up in a pod in the void. I'm assuming this is a reference to like the life raft from the comics, which was a ship built by Reed Richards, and basically whoever was in it survived the incursion, made it to Battleworld, and in Battleworld, Doom had altered the memories of almost everyone so that they forgot what life was like pre Battleworld, so they wouldn't remember their universes. They would just think they've been, life has always existed on Battleworld forever. But the people in the life raft, they um would actually have all their memories intact. So it's almost like they know what reality is, but now they're in a world where like no one knows what the true reality is, and that Doom's manipulating all of them. Um, but yeah, it's interesting. It says just someone's waking up, because in the comics it was basically a group of people. So it'll be interesting to see who that is. Um, yeah, and then there were some rumors that uh just I don't know if it was just people coming up with stuff to connect it to establish things that uh the raft, the prison that they use in like Civil War and all that to keep the Red Hulk and the leader in and Zemo and all them, um that was somehow going to end up becoming a ship. Um it would essentially become the life raft that would help survive the incursions. Um yeah, so there's been talk about that. Um, but that's pretty much it for this supposed leak. Um, yeah, there's a few red flags in here that just doesn't make sense to me. And then obviously we have some bits that have already been officially revealed to us. Um, yeah, the whole Steve being the whole catalyst for the movie is just still odd to me, because then it seems like I said before, Steve's just destined through the universe to just never have a happy ending. Like it's forbidden and the entire multiverse will be destroyed because of it. That just seems so odd. Um, and yeah, it kind of undoes his story arc. And, like there are tons of people causing incursions and everything like that. You have the TVA there to stop people from jumping around, creating branch timelines and all that. So it's not specifically after Steve. Um, but yeah, and then Loki's allowing it all to happen, but yet for some reason Doom's solely focused on Steve. Um, so yeah, that's the odd part about this is Loki's minor, but Steve's really important when it kind of should be the other way around. Um, then you have Monica in the X-Men universe. Why isn't he after her? Um, and then you had the other evil Doctor Strange in Multiverse of Madness. You had the Illuminati Strange from Multiverse of Madness, Dreamwalking. You had, MCU Wanda Dreamwalking, but I guess she's supposedly dead, so I guess I could see why Doom wouldn't be after her, but who knows if he'd know if she was dead or not. So, yeah, it's just the whole Steve being the center of everything is just so weird. Um, yeah, I don't know. So yeah, that's I guess some of my thoughts on this supposed leak. Some of it, yeah, just doesn't make sense to me. But obviously don't know if this is true. We'll have to wait until the movie or we get more teasers. I guess let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks.